Do, do, do. And we are live for real. Okay, hello everybody. I am KatmanU, psychic empath and psychic wrangler. Before we see who I have wrangled in today, allow me to welcome you to Eye Salon, where in each and every show we take a fresh and deep look between the veils of reality. Today we are looking into the quantum field to locate and claim our fractal selves with NDEer, Lorelei Drache. And I'm saying Drache right, yes?
It's Drache.
It's Drache. It's Drache. Okay. All right. Well, I sit
German.
corrected. Oh, German. Ah, there it is. Okay. All right. And so before we do that, let's say hello to Ms. Linda Colderberg, my friend, psychic and conscious business coach. How are you, Linda?
Fabulous. I hope everyone had a beautiful day yesterday, however you spent it. And today I thank you for spending it with us. I am going to be your live stream chat host. And as always, my policy is play nice or get out. This is a safe space for people, and I don't allow nonsense. So with that, please also remember as you watch this and enjoy it, hit the like button and the share. And so you don't miss anything, hit the subscribe button. Share this with your friends because that's how we grow. Okay. And if you can't watch it here, check out our other podcasts on Apple and Spotify. And like us there too, because it helps the algorithms there as well. Also, if you enjoy our show, we encourage you to consider donating through one of the many donation options and links below. And if you can't, that's fine too. Share it. Sharing is caring. Remember that. We love to have you join our Facebook group. If you haven't, go to Third Eye Salon on Facebook and join us there. And with that, hello, Lorelei. I'm going.
So you messed up her first name. I messed up her last name. We're a good duo.
Yeah, coffee. So excited to have you. I was telling Kat that we have gems. We were talking about this. We have gems in our own community, in our own backyard. And I'm so happy to be able to shine the light on one of those today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so happy to be here. It's one of my favorite places.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Lorelei's been watching us and with us, and I had no idea how incredible she was until I listened to Loretta's podcast, and I was like, what are you doing? Get this woman on the show. So here we are today. And let's also make sure we say hello to Jason Adkins. He's a psychic medium, and he is a artistic channeler of your higher fractal ET selves. How are you doing, Jason?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here with everybody. Glad to have Lorelei here. So looking forward to it. Looking forward to the chat.
Nice. All right, excellent. And before we get into Lorelei's bio, I want to let you know, if you don't know already, that we are now an affiliate of Surfshark, which I've been using Surfshark for the last 2 years. They're a VPN, which stands for Virtual Private Network. And I love it. I use it every day on my phone and on my computer. And what does that do? It protects all of your devices from viruses, malware, data leaks, and privacy threats from one account. So one account for all your devices. So if you click on the link down below, you can actually get a discount of 84% for the first 26 months, which is crazy already, but then it's another 2 months free. So if that is you, click on that and check that out. You will not regret it, I assure you. So now let me tell you about Ms. Lorelei. Lorelei had her first near-death experience at age 7, in which she had a drowning accident. After that experience, she developed many psychic, intuitive, empathic abilities. Then she started having contacts with spirits, ETs, Sasquatch, and other interdimensional beings. With so much right there, she went on to have 3 subsequent near-death experiences in her adult life at ages of 28, 35, and 48. Her 4th near-death experience completely changed her perception of reality and her purpose of being here. She was told the power of words and how they manifest on Earth, given the understanding that as a being of high frequency, those words would manifest rapidly. Lorelei was told to be very mindful of her words and thoughts. In 2019, she experienced a connection to oneness during a spiritual awakening that helped her form her understanding of consciousness. Within it, she learned how everything is connected and we are all source wearing different masks to experience and learn self. From that point, she started channeling and receiving many downloads and knowings of creation. In 2022, Lorelei received her Reiki attunements, which completely opened up her clair abilities, the Akashic records, and returned her medical intuitive abilities. She started receiving many more spiritually transformative experiences. In a Beyond Quantum Hypnosis session, she was told more about creation and her purpose for incarnating many times concurrently all throughout all that is. This understanding and clarification on other messages she received gave her a more complete view of how reality manifests. So her full bio is down below, but in the meantime, give us a thumbs up if you are excited to learn about Lorelei's time on the other side, as well as how she's helping people to reconnect with their fractal selves. So, Ms. Lorelei, I wanted to hop in, because you said after, like, according to your bio here, it says like after your first NDE at 7, that's when you started connecting to ETs and interdimensional beings as well as Sasquatch. Could you tell us about that time where you started to connect into meeting those beings and what that was like for you as a kid growing up?
Well, excuse me. Yeah, the first things our family lived on like 191 acres, and so there was lots of ponds and wildlife and things. So we had a lot of strange experiences that I found out later in another mystical experience that had a large paranormal vortex, is what I was told, on that property. And so there were many instances of like seeing beings or orbs, and not necessarily interacting. Like they would, these orbs would like follow you. They made this weird kind of noise, and they would stay up in the tree line. That happened when I was very little. Not long after I was born, these things started to happen. So that's kind of connected later. But so it would kind of like discourage people from being in our woods. It would kind of run them out, especially the hunters. And all the neighbors saw it too for a period of like a week or two. There's this orb. We later had experiences when I was like, I think it was right after my near-death experience that the Sasquatch started showing up that I knew were Sasquatch. Is, learning now, I know those giant orbs were them. That's how they travel multidimensionally. But at the time, we're like, ET, what is this? But we had 2 instances where they destroyed my brother's traps, like around the whole property, and literally chopped down all the trees. I know if you've ever seen any of the Sasquatch footage, how they break trees near the top and over. Yeah, they did that around all of it. And it was so high up that like, we knew it was not anything. When no bear could reach it, it was like, okay, what happened here? And then later, in 2 different instances, the beings pounded on our house late at night. And I remember hiding with my dad, and he's like, that's them, just be quiet. They'll go away, just sit here quietly. I'm like, okay, because I was scared. It was like these loud thuds on the roof, on the side, the porch awning and stuff. And then they came around to the side of the kitchen and were like pounding. The next day we went out, and there was these giant Bigfoot footprints. It was the set, because one was a very large being and the other one was much smaller, going down our driveway, because we had like clay underneath. So it was, very, very visible. I'm like, that's when I knew, okay, my dad knows what he's talking about, because he could see spirits and other things. And I was like, whoa. And during this time I had a I don't know how or what you would call it, almost like an out of body. I was out literally walking my whole property with this being, and this being was giving me all these like downloads and understandings that like I really didn't remember. I just know I was being told something very important. But the thing it left me with was like, your parents are aliens. And this is the 80s. So I was thinking invasion of the body snatchers, like they took my parents, because that's just the mentality we had back then, and I'm like, for days, I was so afraid. I like didn't know what to do, like, oh my God, those are not my parents, But in a later understanding, and also that quantum hypnosis you mentioned, we asked about that. And part of it was they told me, she asked who that being was that spoke with me. And I said, it was the All Father. And she's like, she wanted me to clarify. And I was like, the Father of all that is. He was telling me my purpose here and how I came here, and that, you know, I was love incarnate, and I put myself into the creation to, it's a long story on this one, but to literally balance out the other elementals. And by elementals, I mean, not like we think on Earth of, you know, these creative elementals, but it showed me that the elements of creation are emotions. So it's love and the mirrors of love, because everything is of love. And that's all that exists here, is these beings and of love and the reflection of love. And I said it was a game of smoke and mirrors for these godlings to see themselves and their own emotions and to learn love. So that was part of it. But so I was given that understanding, and I believe that was part of that understanding at that time, of like, to reawaken me, like, this is why you came here, this is what was going on. And later, when I was telling my husband of the experience, he's like, you know who the All Father is? And I say, I knew it sounded familiar. He's like, that's Odin. And which, you know, I have Viking heritage, so I was like, oh, I have the Norse heritage. So it's interesting that I called him the All Father. But yeah, that was that experience. But I had seen other spirits. I always say, though, we're all haunting someone else's timeline. You know, interdimensionally, I know I've connected or haunted other people and done things. In fact, I was given the understanding, some of the ghost phenomenon that we had when my sisters were young children. They were playing with their toys, and they left all their Barbie stuff out. Well, the next morning it was made into a heart. And I was given the understanding that, like, that was me. Like, I was visiting my siblings because my sisters are 10 and 12 years older. I wouldn't be able to grow up with them or play with them. So that was me playing with them. Through the, you know, yeah. So there was a lot of things like that were, that happened as far as connection. And I have a memory of literally the sky opening up. Like, the sky wasn't there anymore, and this giant craft the size of a football field showed up, and there was these things trying to attack it that literally looked like what is now our stealth jets, but this was like early 80s, right? And then there was like these mini, like, light discs that were around fighting them off of this big ship. And I remember clearly that this is like a return memory, going to my mom, well, what's going to happen? Are they going to erase our memory again, or just kill us this time? And I don't mean the aliens. I knew I didn't mean the aliens. And one of the things that happened was one of those stealth-looking jets was shot down, and I saw it go crash, you know, but I don't know if I was seeing something interdimensionally at the time. Do you know what I mean? But my mother saw it too. But those are just some of those experiences that were unexplainable, but very clear memories.
Well, and you had said, and just to clarify, that your parents are aliens. It's how we would say they're ET souls, that their souls are not, you know, they didn't first incarnate at Earth, they are incarnated elsewhere, and then, you know, chose to come here for whatever reasons. Is that accurate?
My understanding was more that, like, I wasn't their child. I mean, energetically or something, you know. And
that you were kind of more the ET in that way. Like, your parents aren't really your parents; they're alien to you because your soul is from someplace else. Okay. That
was my understanding given to me later, because I was like, oh, well, that makes a little more sense. Yeah. And I don't know if it's because, you know, something different came back in my, you know, death experience at 7, or if I just came into this earth different energetically, you know, I'm not sure. I do have, and that came about in my clarification of it came about in my quantum hypnosis about being a Lemurian high priestess, you know, so that makes sense of, like, maybe that's where the energy is. I am not exactly sure. I have yet to get clarification as far as that alien type thing. So
Okay. Okay. Well, Miss Linda or Jason, do you want to hop in at this juncture? You have any thoughts or reflections before I ask my next question?
Keep going, you're on a roll. I'm just
Okay.
responding to all of our wonderful people. I just want to let you know UFO ET
Parents
experiencers
of-
said hi, so happy to be here with you. So I just wanted to pass that on. We have a lot of people cheering for you in the
Aw,
comments. So yay.
nice. What were you going to say, Mr. Jason?
I think I
you
froze. I hope I was
Yeah.
not talking over.
No, you're
Um,
good.
So you said that both of your parents have seen stuff, have experienced stuff. So originally I was going to ask, how was it for your parents with you growing up with these abilities? But since they have those, they've experienced this thing, I'm still kind of curious, like what was that like growing up in a household where was it accepted still, like?
yeah, I mean, we were always the people that everybody come to tell the stories nobody'd ever believe, kind of thing. And so my dad was these spirits, and he had some interesting encounters with spirit, but was very quiet about them. My mother, once she knew I was having these prophetic dreams and things after my first death experience, kind of told me about my dad just so I wouldn't feel so weird or that this is okay, and so I didn't know about my dad till later. And then we would see different beings together, or he'd be like, did you see that? I'm like, well, I saw a quick flash. And then the dog would chase it, and we're like, oh, okay, and later, like in my 20s, he'd like, did you see that? And I literally did see the full apparition, so it evolved. But my mother was just always very open to it. She was literally like my filter. Like when I'd have premonitions or know something, she'd be like, well, Lori had this, or Lori this. And as time went on, my family learned to listen. Like my sister didn't take a flight once because I just like, no, don't go. And it wasn't that anything was going to happen to the flight. I just know whatever came of it was not good for them, So, and with my first death experience, I could tell if people were going to pass or if there was something really wrong with them. You could see the soul start to depart from their body. They would look like a wax dummy, almost like that energy was leaving. I asked not to see that part anymore because it was very disturbing, especially as a child and not knowing if you caused it. So anyway, so those type of things I would relate to my mom because I didn't know where else to go with it or who else would believe. So sometimes she would find a different way to say the message. Not that it wasn't until I was older that she said it came through me, but she'd find a way to connect and do these things for me. But she could always, and now I get it, like she could see through people in a heartbeat. She'd know what kind of person you were, just like that. And now I get she was reading energy. She didn't know anything about these kind of things,
I was going to ask unless you have another question, Jason. Did Jason
No, I'm
freeze
good.
again? Okay, good. Very still. So I was going to ask because you had these Sasquatch orbs, and then these really dramatic Sasquatch experiences, and then you've said that you remember being in our conversation that you remember being a Sasquatch like shaman type person. So you've had many incarnations as shaman. So is that why they were showing up? Were they saying, "Hey, remember us?" Or what's your tell us about your shaman, about your Sasquatch connection? Kind of crack that
well,
open.
I was told in my Beyond Quantum that I've had many incarnations of Sasquatch, but I honestly think now that that might be the higher aspect that's with me. She showed more as a Native American and wanting to be in these colorful skirts, I guess. But they love color too. So I think a lot of the gifts and things I have learned was through those incarnations. Oh, and I remember that's what I was saying. Oh, that I love the fur and I love being, like shiny and soft in my interview. I mean, in my hypnosis, and that I like shiny things. And that's kind of where my love of little shiny things comes from, and a few other things like that. Like I loved being furry. So and just being able to do that multidimensional work and healing and travel and just be anywhere at the speed of thought like spirit, because they have really evolved in that respect and have those abilities. So I miss that as far as being human. But like I was telling you earlier, that's part of the ascension process. I now see a lot of those timelines and dimensions, and where you can lock in consciousness to various different other things. I mean, I think that is part of the goal and part of the reason they're supporting that awareness.
Yeah, that kind of leans into the whole thing of that we are all fractal. We're all fractal aspects of going into fractal, going into fractal, going into fractal. Like, you know, as you lean back, we're all connected to source and the oneness, and yet how those expressions splinter off and express themselves is very different and very dramatic depending on that soul's aspects, choices, and how it can either splinter or stay in a more holistic pattern. Do you want to say something, Miss Linda? I see you came off mute.
Yeah, I get the strangest images sometimes or messages when I'm getting ready in the morning for the shows. So what I got this morning was the words, you know, were all like cell phones. Like, what?
Oh, yeah.
And so it was like, some of us are burner phones. Like, each life is a burner phone. We're doing this over and over again, but some of us are flip phones. Some of us are at that point where we're more connected, and so we have a smarter phone, and some of us don't even need the phone at all. Like, some of us have remembered who we are and we can communicate without the phone. And the lives, the past lives and current lives, and understanding all of those are those of us that keep the phone number no matter what phone we have.
Totally relatable.
So that was my, you know, take on the multi-dimension,
That's
our
awesome.
lives here.
And it's funny, when you said cell phone, I also always talk about how we're the divine antenna, like literally
Yes.
transmitting consciousness into this reality. And that's why we're mostly water, and have, you know, and healing your channel expands that connection. And so it's, you know, I love the analogy of spirit. In fact, in that hypnosis thing, and I know I'm talking about that a lot, that was recently, but I was literally talking about being source code, and source code is always safe. Nothing can harm source code. So it was just really interesting that everything that I get is more like, this is the simulation. I mean, some people believe it wholeheartedly in that theory, but it's just the analogy of spirit to me. So as far as how it projects and how it manifests.
Yeah, I think it's good to touch on that, because some people, they're like, oh, it's all a computer simulation, it's not real. And it's like, no, it's kind of taking their analogy. In my book, it's taking it too far, where it's like, you know, everything is, and there is that duality of there being the organic earth grid, and then, like you're saying, there's this other grid that's laid on top of it that's, you know, not organic, that is really there to control. Gosh, and that connects me back to your experience with the ship, where the ship was being, I feel like was connected to that. But I think it's been, because the reason I think it's important to bring up is because it becomes a point where people disconnect. Like, it's that same thing of like, oh, it's illusion, it's not real. So they disconnect and they stop living their lives on point and on purpose, because they're like, it's an illusion, so therefore nothing matters, it doesn't count, it's fake. Fake and illusion, it's not the same, does not mean the same in this instance.
Right.
Do you want to
And I
speak
always
to
say
that?
it's kind of like a holodeck. Whatever your thoughts are putting into is what's projected in front of you, you know, in that sense. And it's but they're all layers of truth. From what I was shown, it is all layers of truth of creation, all of it. You know, like, the only thing that exists is conscious energy, you know, and in the voided creation, there's all these potentialities, you know, these boxes of potentialities that your frequency can line up to experience, you know. So, and never fear that you're missing out on something, because I was shown literally this blue grid of thousands of me at every intersection, making and living these different choices. You're not missing out by your choice. Don't be fearful of making choices or having experiences, because they're all available to you. It's whatever you want to experience. That's my experience. I don't claim it for everyone, but Spirit has showed to me many times in different ways, you know, from even like it showed me there was animal incarnations. That was like a wheel, like which wheel does it stop? It showed me in front of a face, like I'm this time, you know. So your consciousness is connected to so many other things experiencing at once. It's not locked in, it's just your perception at this moment, but all of it is real in the sense that you wanted to create this experience for whatever else. Why disconnect from something you created? It makes no sense to me, other than like you have the choice to match that loving frequency or that frequency of chaos and suffering that I was shown in that 2019 connection to oneness experience I had. So, you know, that accountability and responsibility for your choices, your thoughts and your words needs to be there. Everything happens through you. You are a conduit for source to experience itself. So take some accountability of how you created this pattern and what you want to experience with it.
Yeah, and I think as we wake up into our fractal lineage, if I can use those words, as we wake up into our fractal lineage, we can say, oh, you know, 5,000 years ago when I chose this, or, you know, when I did this, when that happened, that's still echoing through the rest of my fractal expressions. And you can heal that point of disintegration, or that point of, you know, implosion, and watch it impact all of the other fractal expressions that it's connected to. But it's part of the waking up process. It's the privilege and pain of waking up when you realize, oh, I need to complete grieving that, or I need to complete that mission, or I need to complete, and it's not a disconnect from who you are. It's a continuation of who you've always been.
Yes, exactly. Very much. Yeah. That's my understanding. As far as when I even do like these healings, you know, I see the different fractalations of where different choices were made, or changed that person or that energy, where they put their joy outside themselves, or where they chose, you know, to attach to things that weren't loving, and so on. You know, but I've also seen, you know, multidimensional, like, you know, all these other lives. I never say past lives, because they're all concurrent. And when you look at it that way, it makes more sense, because that's why energetically they affect you. Those closest to you energetically affect you. That's why sometimes you even don't see a change in a person, and you don't understand it. Like suddenly they like a new food. Suddenly they have this phobia they never had before. That's that energy getting close or converging. I did a lot of fractal rebraiding, however you want to call that. I don't always use proper terminology, but you get the understanding. Because the more I connected and called that energy back to me, like all lines connected to me prosper. That's one of my favorite mantras. The more they came to me, the more I realized how they were affecting this life or other lives, and how some patterns continued and didn't. And you can choose not to continue that pattern or work on it in this life, you know, or let go of it. Like once I saw a past life where I was shot and killed, and I've talked on this many interviews, but I was able to let go of that pain I had since childhood. They took me to tons of specialists. But once I forgave that and was aware of that, I could let it go. So, you know, there's so much that comes through cell memory and ancestral energy, because part of what I was shown is we are our ancestors and we are our descendants energetically. We can overlap like that consciousness. It's a thread to learn. We're supposed to get that 360 view of these experiences. That helps us heal. It helps us be unconditional love, because we see every aspect and what drove those experiences, like why this person reacted that way, why they did this, why you did this, why this is a pattern even that's repeating through your lives. All of that. I mean, it's all connected. It's just a continuation of consciousness.
One of the things that you said in one of the other podcasts was really being in the moment now, and how much we rob the now by being connected to our past stories, or I'm rephrasing it, but our past experiences, our past stories, and that identity with that, and that injury or that experience, versus here I am right now in this moment. I just feel so much like it robs us when we allow ourselves to continually victimize ourselves, because that's when we're bringing it into our own timeline now. We're robbing us of our moment right now. And if we're always living in I'll be okay when, we're robbing ourselves of the now. And you said that so beautifully. And so I just wanted to reflect that back to you. And that sometimes those people that we feel harm us the most, I believe those people have chosen the hardest assignment ever. We made an agreement to say, I trust you enough to be that person in this life, to follow through with this. And it's a sucky assignment. I know it's a sucky assignment, but I want to heal this in my lineage, in my fractal being. Will you do it?
I always say it's your heavenly best friend. Your nemesis is usually your heavenly, but like someone that loves you more than, there's not really levels of love, but I'm saying someone that you have worked with and know and trust that, and that always helps me in those moments. And I've since found forgiveness for that. But something I want to say along the lines that you brought up for me in my 2019 experience was that, of that healing of an understanding of the moment of now. But part of it was that I saw that accountability for the story I was creating, the thoughts and words I was choosing. I was putting people in those roles. That's what I was crying about. That's what I was apologetic for in that 2019 connection to oneness, because I saw myself, from the beginning of time, how my energy was here and the earth was created and how everything manifested. And taking that accountability and responsibility that, by making those choices, having those thoughts, letting the density of earth affect my thought processes, that I literally put these people in these roles where they had to suffer. And that's what had to end. I wasn't making loving choices. I wasn't seeing, as a collective, this was everyone, not just me, but I was seeing it, that we were making those choices not from love. And that's how we created these roles for everyone, and by those choices and pulling all those people in. And, it didn't need to be that way. And, and that my perception, and by switching that perception, Eden is here. It's always been here. As far as that beautiful paradise has always been here. Nobody made me make unloving choices. I just thought, hey, I'm here to experience. Let's see what I can do. Instead of, hey, look at the beautiful thing I can create. But as far as the moment of now, one of the things I talk about is like how these patterns repeat. Because if you're always looking back and looking at those wounds and not choosing to forgive or put the love in that moment, you're recreating that pattern, because that's how they showed me creation is. Like wherever you feed that energy, intention, words, thought, it's going to say, it's like the universe is like the jinn, where you put your energy, it thinks you want more of. So that pattern's going to keep repeating itself as long as you're feeding it. Just like how there were different gods and different things. The minute we quit feeding them energy, they move out of our experience. Think about people, like if you're not connecting with someone for a little while, they move out of your experience, right? You're not feeding them then any energy. You're not portraying them or pulling them into your experience. They fade away, but all of a sudden you'll think of them and they contact you because you fed that thought energy. Okay. To me, that, that's how it works, because we're each have these thought processes and we're creating our own little realities, right? And so you can pull people into your realities with energy agreement. But I always say, this is why, like somebody will say it was a red shirt and it was a yellow shirt. Okay. And neither of you are wrong. That was your experience. That's what you created. That's what you saw. You might have things that match up because this energy is interweaving, like, oh yeah, it was at such and such a place at such and such a time, and nothing else matches. And your thing, and people will say, oh, that's false memory, or you must remember differently. No, it's just that was your experience with it, your perception, and your perception helped create those moments, and they're imprinted on you as part of your reality. That's how my understanding of some of it. But as far as the now moment, do what brings you joy. Joy takes you to that moment of now. Nothing else matters but what you're doing in that moment. For me, that's dancing. That was one of the messages after death communication from my mother, is I needed to start dancing again. Because I understand that, because the continued message was, that's when I'm in my moment of joy. I'm not recreating a pattern. I'm not looking back. I'm not worrying about the future of what would, could. I used to be one of these people, like I had to figure out every scenario and how it might play out just in case, so I felt safe. That's not living. The moment of joy is living. And when you're in that moment of pure love and joy, abundance flows. When you just surrender to that energetic flow, you're not always fighting. Your higher, I don't like the term higher self, but your complete consciousness knows the storyline and everything else that you came here for. You just trust and flow with it. You would have such a beautiful life. You know, that intuition, I always say, is your divine GPS. But how many times do we go against our intuition? We second guess ourselves 1,000 times. And we're like, oh, no, that can't be, or that'll never happen. We're born literally with this sense of unworthiness, because we came as these beautiful stars put in this itty bitty body, you know, and I literally say it's like the jinn being put in the lamp. You know, it feels so foreign and we feel so constrained. And it's the original separation anxiety that I always call it, the original PTSD, because we were these big, beautiful, expansive beings of consciousness. And then we're in this, we locked our consciousness on this itty bitty body and this itty bitty experience but it's a beautiful gift. It's like a vacation. It's like going to the amusement park. I mean, from a spirit 360 vantage point, this is our amusement park. This is where it's our safe place to create, because it won't affect anything outside of here, because Earth affects everything in its true vibration. So this is kind of like our learning grounds. This is where the what do you call it? Illusion or simulation comes in. Okay. This is kind of like our creation grounds. So we saw what we did with it. So we are making different choices as far as I was shown. That's why I chose to come back from my fourth death experience, because I was literally shown, you know, we are making these higher choices. Paradise is returning, you know, but as the Earth purges, yes, there's going to be a little bit of a rocky start, because she is also a soul. She has their own trauma and trauma from us that is merging up. Okay. So, you know, it's going to be rocky. But my thing I was shown is literally hold your vibration. As long as you believe you are safe and loved unconditionally, none of the things that happen can literally touch you. It cannot do soul damage. It cannot touch you. I was shown, my mother gave me that in after death communication. I was shown it also, like there was these huge tidal waves, you know, spirit like symbolism. And I was literally walking through it unharmed. And there were others like me, but there was others like doing that whole, what do you call it, like earthquake thing, and they're hiding and they're doing all this stuff trying to protect themselves. And I'm like, what are you doing? Get up your feet. You're perfectly safe. You know, and the ones that were in fear were just being slammed into the sides of buildings and washed away and everything else. It was symbolic, but it literally showed me, like, you can either live your life in trust and love, or be backed around and suffer in fear. And for me, I choose love, you know, and it's available to everyone. On that frequency is available to everyone. You'll notice if you start dispelling anything that doesn't serve you, you will start to align with all of that.
I wanted to hop in just because you said kind of a little bit of a contradiction. You said that you know, you can create here and it doesn't impact anything, but Earth impacts everything. So I'm wondering if you can clarify that, because it's like, okay, is it safe to be here and create, or am I creating chaos in the universe by my choices?
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is like another energetic layer of what I call like true Earth, right? It's where we like, it's kind of like the beta test, like what will work here, what won't, you know, for what, like my daughter even remembers coming here to scout, like what will work and what won't on her planet. And like she was in school, like she had to see all these different Earths and know which Earth was hers. Okay. Because we're creator beings. I was shown that we like create universes, right? So my understanding is like why people call it a simulation is because that paradise Earth is here, but then there's this overlayer where we're learning and trying to create. So that like when we meet that vibration of that loving Earth, Eden, we know how to create love rather than chaos. So it's kind of just like vibrationally stacked to me. So, and it's kind of like you wouldn't want to put a 2-year-old in a china shop, right? Because they haven't learned not to touch or rattle or bang everything, right? So part of the thing I was shown was that like, this is kind of like a learning tool. Like our consciousness is like in a classroom, but it's projected here to learn and see what would work and what wouldn't work, and how each choice we made would manifest. Like, and I've had other communication and a friend's after-death communication that literally said that that was part of what they did. You know, like once they died, they said, well, I want to change this and this about Earth. And then they saw the simulation play out, like how that Earth would look, and it turned into utter chaos. True Earth is exactly what it needs to be in balance, but we have to learn that, I guess. That's my understanding. So that's what I meant by that, vibrationally.
And maybe you can talk about True Earth and New Earth at this juncture. There's other things I want to get to because we haven't talked about your other NDEs yet. But you know, maybe you can talk about how you see New Earth in this context of True Earth, because people are like, wow, you know, once we ascend, we'll be on New Earth. And again, it becomes this thing of like Linda was saying, well, in the future, when I could be happy is when la 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 la. And it's like, okay, so again, we're denying this moment. So maybe you can break down True Earth, New Earth for us.
Well, what I mean is what your consciousness perception locks into. I don't feel anybody's going anywhere physically. Like there's a lot of people that believe, oh, we're going to leave this Earth, you know, and I respect their creation if that's what they choose. But from my understanding, it's more that we are literally aligning our frequency with a higher experience. You know, there's not going to be like these billion people stay here and us 144,000 go there, or all these other things that I've heard of. It's more that a perception switch. You know, like when you start to see everything from a state of love, that's all you see. That's your storyline. That's your sovereignty. That's what you can choose to create and see everywhere. Like I stopped watching news in 2001 when I had my son, and I think that was partly came through him because I had some pre-birth things, and even how he, you know, would be born and how to save him and everything else that he gave me. And one of the things was stop watching the news. And I understood that consciousness here and the powers that be know that what you feed the mind, you create. Okay. And in the moment of now, all that exists. So if they're feeding your mind this, you're also creating it in the moment of now. So to choose the loving thought. I mean, I keep saying that, but it's that simple. It really is. And, you know, but some people like the adventure and the chaos, and they thrive from it. And if that's what they want to keep choosing and creating, you know, that's their sovereignty. But I don't have to attach to their storyline. I don't have to live that life. My life is simple and beautiful. It involves nature and the people I love. Outside of that, and that's not being like, you know, the toxic positivity or anything like that. I'm just choosing actively what I want to experience. And the more I feel we do that as a collective, the chaos will start to disappear.
Yeah, I've
That's
heard
my
that.
version of New Earth.
Well, and I'll just expand on that because I've heard that as well. It was like, if you like you said, when they stopped giving the ancient gods their power, the ancient gods, you know, went away because there was nothing left to feed them, and that is the power of our creation. So if we stop giving our power to the narratives of war and the narratives of conflict and the narratives of this toxic duality. I think there's nothing wrong with duality, but there's like this fighting duality. If we stop engaging that and saying, I've got to raise my sword and do a battle cry and forge toward that. Well, you've just pulled that thing into your experience, and it's not to bypass it and say, I'm not gonna look at it, it's not there. It's just saying, oh, I see that it's there, but I'm choosing to go deeper and anchor myself into what you could call New Earth, which is like going back to Eden, which is again like a layer of reality, since this is all layers of reality from what I'm learning from you. I can go into this layer of reality where all of that just didn't even occur, and you could experience that in terms of what weaving in and out of that dimension and frequency, and then into this one as it starts to level out. That's kind of how I'm seeing it. If you want to speak to that or reflect what you think about that.
Yeah, it's about, what storyline do you want to attach to? It's all about attachment and what you feed. Like I was literally shown in one experience, like choosing something like a Rolodex. Like there was all these available potentials, and it showed all me in the moment. And I literally saw my choice. And it was interesting because the souls I was deeply connected to and doing some spiritual work at the same time literally had the same experiences. There was like 3 of us. We all were being shown these. And it's like, whoa, because that was part of my question to spirit. Like, it's like a choose your own adventure book. So, so literally what storyline do you want to take in that book? Which one do you want to choose? And, I respect that they want to choose that, but that doesn't mean I have to experience it. I don't have to feed it emotionally. I don't have to attach to it. We were meant to be the observer. This is literally what I was shown, is that it's a play. It's a divine play. The character may die, but the actor never does. And, and many times I have been shown, like, pulled and seen, myself playing out, or how someone else's energy, because they expected me in that role to react that way, how I just went with that energy. They literally pulled me into it. And so, because I was unaware to hold my own energetic sovereignty, so I understood that I made that choice because it was something like they needed to learn, and they chose to learn, or that was their storyline. So I needed to be that in that story, So I understand these things from an energetic level. Each time this happens, I ask, well, was this for me, or is this a learning moment for someone else? Because there have been times where I will reflect that person's thoughts. They're not my thoughts, but I will reflect literally what they're thinking. And so then I become that mirror, and they'll eventually reject that mirror, but it heals them. But then, they'll still believe you thought that way, but it healed them, and we have those kind of agreements to be a mirror. And that's what's very hard about being a strong empath, especially when you're telepathic. Like if there's an intent thought, or somebody's really focused on me, like sometimes it's hard to do even interviews or different things, because I will pick up on that. And these thoughts will be going through my head when I'm trying to talk. And it's like, oh, come on. So I get how often we're pulled, and how often we're like, was that thought mine? That's why I always say, energetically, if it doesn't feel like yours, spell it out loud. It doesn't belong to you. Spirit had showed me it's very important going forward, as we become more aware like this, of knowing your own thought frequency, what that emotion, what that frequency feels like for you. Because there's thought technology, and there's also random thought forms everywhere, and leftover thought forms in various things. Spirit had showed me that is the case. And it's sometimes where you'll see like random, what appear to be random acts happen in various different places of the world, but all the same parameters, right? Like, I even read later, how spirit guides you to things. I literally read a whole study of like these same people doing this in the same town name, doing the same thing. And they're usually not positive things, right? Because they made the news, but literally all the parameters were the same, and sometimes on the same day, and they got the same punishment, everything. These are thought forms that run through our reality. Whether or not you listen to them is your responsibility.
Yeah, it's like running through the streams of our collective psyche. And if you choose to say yes to that, then you get to co-create and experience that and view that with your energy and focus. Mr. Jason, do you want to hop in? You've said
Yeah.
about one thing so far. Make
Yeah,
sure you
and
got a voice
I'm
in here.
hoping I'm hoping that I'm phrasing this the right way. Okay. So when you were talking about, when you stop giving the energy to a person or a thing, how it leaves, right? Okay. And we are creators. That's what we're here. We're here practicing this creation before we move to this the paradise earth, right? If I'm thinking that's in the right terminology with the layers. Okay.
Sort of, yeah.
Okay. So if I'm wanting to choose a new story, right? If there's an experience that I'm wanting to create, what are 2 tips or tools that someone would start? Like, how do I start focusing my energy? What does that mean towards this new opportunity that I'm wanting? Does that make sense?
Yes. And it's literally, what thoughts are you feeding? Like, if you want to be healed, visualize yourself healed. It's as simple as that. Don't allow anything else in there. This is what the healed version of me looks like, and attain it in the now moment. Because you literally pull things in from that void of creation. So if I want to be healed, I need to visualize myself as already being healed. I'm already perfect. I'm already a perfectly imperfect fractal of God. I don't need to be any more perfect than that. And if you view yourself in that complete love of, I'm exactly who I need to be right now in this place and time, and love myself as that, then you're already embodying that unconditional love that is source, that is its being, right? So same with, like, okay, I want a new house. Well, what does that new house look like? Don't create all these things like we tend to do, like, oh, well, I'd have to have a new job, I'd have to have this and this just to get that house. No. Visualize that house, where it's going to be, how you're going to look in it, and literally let the universe work for you. But the universe wants to see an action step. So let's say you want this new house. So start searching the internet for the house you want. Not how you're going to get it. I got a house. Nobody even knows how I got this house. They're like, literally, how did you get it? Because this house was on the market or off the market for like 5 years. People put bids on it, everything. Nobody got the house. 5 years later, it pulls up. I paid like a minuscule of what it's worth. And it was a house that was in my visions that my mother gave me. And I was like, okay. But people are still like, how you got that? We put money down, we put all this stuff. Nobody got this house. It's kind of like that. It's like letting go of the what, when, how, and just knowing it belongs to you. This is what I want to experience. But that action step, I started looking. At the time, I didn't have money. I just started scanning, that kind of thing. So whatever you feel is your best timeline, like whatever you think is best for you, try to visualize it. But also trust that if this wasn't something, because I always consult the guides, like, for my highest good. And I know if it doesn't come through, then it wasn't for my highest good. It's always this or something better. So if this didn't come through, there is something better. Just trust the path. But you have to surrender to that flow of, I have faith there's something better. I hope I answered you.
I think that, sorry, go ahead, Jason. I don't want to cut in.
Oh, no. Yeah, great answer.
Okay.
I was just going to say, there's also the thing of like the dissonance, and when you're like, okay, that's for me, and then and watching the part that comes up and says, oh, but I'm not worthy because of XYZ, or oh, it can't happen because of XYZ, and that's where the healing is. It's not like stuff those parts and make them shut up. Like, that's part of the healing work. Is anything that's the dissonance, is like, that is your inner child crying for help, saying, please heal my understanding because I think I'm not worthy.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And everything is I always say it's the teaching moment, because it's like, okay, why is that the first thought that came to me? Why? What does that look like? And sometimes, it's from other lives, other things you were told. Most things, root back to our childhood, but they might be still a repeat pattern from multiple lives, but they're very much programmed. I always say, protect your children from programming, including you. Nothing is fanciful. We are limitless. Stop telling them it's the imagination or quelling the imagination. That is literally where our creativity as beings come. I'm not saying I am saying live in the clouds, because you can. Hold that childlike innocence for as long as possible. That's the part we try to kill first as a society, and we wonder why we're at where we're at. I'm sorry, Linda.
I was just thinking of earlier. You were talking about repeating patterns, and then Kat brought up, heading for that goal and having that sabotage pop in. And at the beginning of that conversation, I had asked, what is it when, how do you break that pattern when you see the same thing coming up over and over again in a different way? Or you hear the words, why does this always happen to me? Or why do I always attract those types of people? All of those things come in. And the image that came to me was a little kid putting their hand on the hot stove and doing it again and again and again. And the question wasn't, why does somebody leave the hot stove on? It's, why does the child keep putting his hand on the hot stove? Like, you've got to ask yourself why you're reaching for that pain point over and over again, why you're creating that in your life over and over again. There's something to be, you're getting something out of it until you can figure that out. It's you pointing something out to you for healing. And maybe it's that, I want my mom's attention, right? I keep putting my hand on the stove because I'm not getting enough attention, or I didn't get enough attention from my mom. Whatever that pattern is that keeps happening, it's like, why do you keep reaching for the stove? Answer that, and you can stop reaching for the stove.
Exactly. And too, if you think about it, it's only when we get in those deep dark patterns, and some call them dark nights of the soul, that we even reach for the source of who we are. And that should be an everyday, every moment thing. But some people, it seems that they need those moments before they'll take that deep dive, that accountability, responsibility, that why does this happen to me? And truly mean it, like to truly find, why is this happening to me? Why am I recreating this? What in me feels unworthy or feels that needs to be punished? Is it for the choice, that I chose to leave everything I know to come into this physical body? Maybe, that's the original one. But there's so much more to it that we take on energetically, and talk to your body. I say this so many times because the body has a consciousness, and it has a base, primal consciousness, but it has its own fears, worries. That's where grief comes from. Because as an eternal soul, we know it's just an evolution of consciousness. It's not death. But the physical body is still mourn. It still wants that voice. It wants that hug. It wants that physical interaction. So it still needs that validation. And often we're so busy trying to be this spiritual being that we forget our body has a mind, and it needs that love, and it needs that validation. And so that symbiosis needs to happen to literally create that healing and to become that multidimensional being, knowing that the body feels safe, that you're always with it and you're always guiding it, no matter where your consciousness is locked into.
Well, I want to move us into, we're just going to finally get to the 23rd year of your life and talk to you about what did you experience when you went to the other side with that near-death experience. Why was that near-death experience important? What was the information? What did you bring back?
Which one are you asking about? I'm sorry.
Year number 23 of your life. You said, because you have when you had a near-death experience, according to your bio, young lady. Oh, I'm sorry, 28. That's my typo.
Okay,
28. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Okay, 28 is literally. I don't have a lot of conscious memory of that particular experience. I had a visitation from my deceased grandmother, and she told me that I was 3 months pregnant, and then I was going to lose the baby. And she showed me me and her in the clinic waiting room, and then a calendar of the day that I would lose the baby. And she said, don't be afraid. You can't keep this child, this baby, but more will come. You just have to trust that. And on that day, I ended up in the ER in extreme pain, bleeding out. The baby's heartbeat had stopped. And they did not know me, and it was an emergency. So they gave me too much anesthesia. And I guess I was anemic, didn't know that either. So I stopped breathing. They eventually intubated me soon, sorry. And I was bleeding out, so they gave me a bunch of meds to, try to save me, and obviously it worked. But I was given the understanding that I literally went home for healing so that I could have more babies. And they told me, and it's interesting because the doctor kind of validated that. He's like, this baby, the systems didn't interconnect. It was kind of like your body trying to figure out how to make a baby, literally is what he told me. And that was my daughter, Lydia. And my daughters have had experiences where they've seen her growing up, like the age she would be now and things. But I was given the understanding, like, she did that to help me, and her and my grandmother did this so that I could have more babies. Because I literally, I think it was 2021, I had what you call maybe a prophecy that I would have this very gifted child. Because before that, I wanted to be a hermit, live in the woods. After my first death experience, I'm like, I just want to be alone in nature. Leave me alone. Nature's my church. Good. I don't need, so, but then it put that whole thing in my head, like, you're supposed to have these children, and, so that was all part of that experience. And I felt the same way coming back, and I literally was the one calming everybody else. Like, it's okay. This was meant to happen. My husband actually had a breakdown after that. But I'm just saying, like, I was calming everybody else. I had a party scheduled that night. I still did it. I was like, no, this is all part of the plan. People are looking at me like, you're nuts. But I literally knew. I just trusted. I had faith, from my first death experience. That I'm like, okay, this is what it's supposed to be, Wow. So that was that particular experience and understanding from it.
That's so huge. I mean, I think there's so much to be said about people who have lost children, and to know that that life goes on in spirit, and that your daughter Lydia is, alive and well in spirit and doing her thing, and she can still connect with you. Not to diminish anyone's grief, but just to say there's an expansion as well as the grief that you can lean into.
Yeah, it was kind of a mutual agreement. She just wanted to dip in to feel what it was like to be human, just for that little bit,
Yeah, like, I guess that was my question, is if she had, if she came back as another child, but it sounds like she's her own being, but she did have her own reasons for coming in as well. Like, I'll test the physical out, but I'm not going to stay. I'll just kind of get my feet wet.
Yeah, I've had some, like, psychic friends or this or that say that they thought she has, and maybe that's the one that sees her. Maybe it's a part of her energy. I don't know.
Oh, that could be, sure, because we're not just one thing, right? That's very fair. Linda or Jason, did you want to hop in, or are you doing all right?
Good. I'm taking it all in. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I said. Like, Lorelei is like this fount that you just want to, like, stand next to, get your cup, and just like, okay, more. It's so good. So Ms. Lorelei, then let's talk about your 38th year and the near-death experience.
I had lost blood flow to my brain, and I guess I was with my husband and daughter at the time, and I staggered backwards, fell against a door jamb, hit my head, and had a seizure. And they said I appeared to stop breathing. In that moment, I went to what I call, maybe some people call it true earth. I don't know. I call it Heaven City. It's where, like, all the spirits interconnect and work with those of us here and guide us. So it's kind of like where we hang out as spirit, I suppose. And I was in this garden. All I can remember is, like, the mist, and but it seemed like a city garden. And I was on this marble bench. Interesting enough, my husband and his experience went to that same a similar marble bench. Anyway, and I was sitting there, and this being that looked like my mother was talking to me. And she was kind of contrite, because energetically I'm like, that's not my mom. She's like, it's for your benefit. It's kind of what I got telepathically. Like, they wanted me to be calm. And she said, she's like, you've done enough now, you can stay, you know. And I was like, they're like, we'll give you time to think, that kind of thing. And all I kept repeating is, no, I have to get back to my daughter. I cannot say I'm going back. And there's a couple of layers to this. I was given the understanding, like, I had put in a positive balance. Like we always want to energetically like leave with like a negative slate, like I don't know and I don't take, you want to at least a positive balance. I was shown like kind of like you put more love out into the world than not. And that's kind of like how you level up. It's basically how I was shown. But the reason I was so adamant about my daughter, and in spirit timing kind of seems to happen all at once. Part of that was the understanding that like I chose love, because I had chosen in another lifetime, I died, and that's in my wife's arms with that same daughter, her same soul. And she has memories of that lifetime of growing up alone and impoverished on the wharf and being on ships, because it was kind of like 1800s London, from my understanding and from my remembrance. I was a cobbler, and my shop was on one side of this like brook, it wasn't a big river or anything. My shop was here, and I was headed home. My house was like 2 houses over this bridge. And as I was almost over the bridge, and this is like twilight, right? 2 men come rushing me and to rob me, and I had my coin purse, and I gave them that, but the one, it wasn't enough, and the other guy's trying to grab them. Come on, we got it, let's go. Well, they had those old fashioned, like musket balls, those little hand muskets. Well, of course, they're hair triggers. So when he pulled his arm, it went off and shot me under the right ribs. And that's the earlier where I said I had pain there my whole life. And but in this whole thing, I was able to heal that because I had that remembrance. And anyway, I made my way home, those 2 houses down, and like literally fell into my wife's arms. And my same daughter was at my feet, and I said, I love you, I'm so sorry. And I passed away in their arms, So so there was a lot of like, I couldn't do that to her soul again. I couldn't cause that trauma. I knew her, so I chose to come back in this life. I wasn't going to do that to her. And it explained like how like she was so clingy, as far as like if I was out of her sight, or she was always so protective of me, even energetically. She'd always put these big orbs of energy to protect me no matter where I went. She wanted to know exactly where I was, and so she could, so it makes a lot of sense. That was that.
So you kind of, you did balance some stuff, and you, like your first incarnation, or you're not first incarnation, your first NDE, which you talk about on Loretta's show in more detail. You're saying, it was like, I'm not going back. And then by this time you're like, I'm going back. And so you really had, aligned to your soul mission at that juncture. And if we could, because there's so much I also want to talk to you about, but I'm 45 years old. What was that? It's hard to believe that you're older than 45, but
well, there's 48.
48. I'm good with numbers. I'm good with numbers.
Okay.
It is 48. Jeez Louise. Sorry
Yeah,
about that.
that was
You're
last
48.
January.
Oh, okay. There you go. All right.
Yeah. I had an autonomic nervous system issue. I stopped breathing in my sleep. And I believe I was already in astral with my soul group. I do a lot of quantum work, and that's even where I go, like before I meet with people to help them with healing and stuff. I'll go talk to like what I call their, full consciousness. Anyway, I was in that whole white misty area with my soul group, I think, when my body went into distress, is what I'm just kind of the understanding I had. And I just, and I remember like the scrambling, like, what did you do to create that? Like I heard it, like my what I call my twin soul fractal, and I've had that validated. Him and my good friend and my husband and my daughter, I recognized them. The rest were just like energy bodies, and they felt like hundreds of thousands, like around me. And during this experience, and anyway, so literally, my friend's higher self, I'll just use that term because it's so much easier, said to me, if you want that body, you need to get in it right now. And I'm like, get me right back in there. But like I said, all this is happening simultaneously. So like my twin fractal was saying and yelling at me for how I created it. I felt like I got called to the principal's office because he was telling me about the power of words, thoughts, and intentions. He's like, I had literally, in the near-death experience group on Facebook, there was this meme, and it was like lame ways we die, because it was just trying to make light of the near-death experience. Well, then some people were putting like, I'm going this way next time, right, kind of thing. And I said I wanted to go more like grandpa, not the passengers in his car screaming. He died in his sleep. Yeah. So they reminded me after like my 2019 experience, like my highlight frequency, I things manifest faster. There's no time to negate them. That's part of the reason things are so dense here, because it's almost like a learning tool. You know, when you get to a certain frequency, things manifest very fast. Like my stuff is down, depending upon what it is, it could be minutes, it could be up to a week. Okay. Depending upon how big of a manifestation it is. So literally this was a week later after I wrote. And he was yelling at me like, at your level of light, you have to be mindful. That mindfulness of what you create. He's like, you know, I'm like, what do you expect? When we get here, we forget. Human me's a ditz. I literally said that to him. You know, I'm like, she's not going to remember this, you know, is what I said to him. And, but I got the understanding, you know, that's why some things, you know, are playing out in this world now that were created way long ago. It just, however, the energy and the density is that was put towards it. So, but it's thoughts, intentions, and words, you know, even we don't even think about word root meanings anymore. And they do.
Yeah.
Like,
Good
literally
point. Wow.
spelling. Like, that's why I don't say good morning anymore. Mourning is to mourn the dead. Okay. Like mourn, like here I am in a fake world dead again. Right. You know, I always say good day, you know, the roots matter. I mean, I'm not saying to be like paranoid of your thoughts, because then you're still feeding it, but just be mindful. Are you speaking love? Is that a loving word? There's so many phrases we don't realize are programming, or that we don't believe. Like we'll be like, I'm dying to do something, or it's killing me, you know, or I don't want to see that, or my, you know, that makes me sick to my, you know, your body hears that. It literally programs that if you say it often enough. And how often do we say those kind of words?
Yeah.
So it was showing me all of this, and I'm like face palming, quite literally, right? But as far as the bodily thing, when she said, you know, if you want that body, you need to get back in it now. I literally was like, well, how do I start this vehicle? I literally called it a vehicle. And they're like, you have to swallow. So literally, I was seeing myself third person take a drink. That's the weird thing I don't understand. But as soon as I swallowed, I was able to take this huge deep breath in. And then it was like a mule kicked me in the chest. You know, it hurt so bad. But then it was like, then they told me do a systems check. So I'm like, I can't move my body. I don't feel anything. They're like, okay, well, move your energy. So like they made me move my energy from like my feet up. But as I did that, it was like your hand to sleep times 10,000. It hurt more than childbirth, more than anything I've ever experienced. It was for an instant, but it hurt. Like all your nerves coming online at once. And then I literally shook. Then like that pain brought me straight into my body. And I literally sat there and shook for like 20 minutes. I think I was in shock, to be honest. I mean, that's what it felt like from my medical training. Like I was in shock, but, and it took me a long time to talk about that one or integrate it or my understandings from there. Cause there was like so much they gave me. Like as a knowing, not so much in words. Those were the words that I heard, you know, that I transferred to you today, but there was just so much understanding and how everything, but I literally said, get me back in that body now. I spent too many lifetimes trying to get to this point, because literally I was shown like this beautiful thing that is coming, you know, and this awareness that is coming and my purpose in it and the healing, and just that I was supposed to speak these words, that I would bring back this vibration, that my words are light code. And no matter what I say, as long as the intent is to heal or to awaken, it's like a key. After that experience, I started handing out keys to young people saying, you are limitless. Don't let your mind stop you. Because I knew that key and that key code, they showed me like they're like key codes were so important, and that there was more people coming in, to carry this vibration and all, the light grid stuff. I've seen so many light grids, and even things falling like the Matrix, like getting messages like the green Matrix with words coming down, or glowing words on the wall, or the blue grid, or the blue, I think it's horizontal, and the vertical honeycomb grid, and the crystalline grids, all of that, the energy that makes up this earth. And literally I was shown it was to like light it up. I always say light it up. Like we're each, like my twin fractal is all the way in Canada, he remembers our soul joining ceremony and everything else. And he kind of initiated my awakening in like 2012, just some of his remembrances and some of mine. And he was always like, why are we so far apart? But literally, energetically, we are where we need to be. And we are called to where we need to be, as we heal the grid to what you guys call like the new earth or whatever, relight that light grid of energy and intention. And that quantum hypnosis where you were talking about fractals, that was part of it. I literally was shown that I needed to connect with all these people and these other fractals of me, like my husband, my daughter. All of these people are fractal of the same whole. I mean, like we all are, but they're all part of my like oversoul. Like we all came here to do these things. We just picked different energies to work with, right? Because I couldn't hold everything I need to do, what I need to do here in one physical body. I could never hold that kind of light energy in one body to complete all of this. So this is like what I call my jump team, like that we came here to do this, right? And so as I connect to that and my other lives, I pull all this energy in, and we all have this awareness, and the more gifts that open up, because each one of us brought these in, and that was my understanding of some of that from those experiences.
Do you want to? There's a lot to be said there, and I'll make sure Linda gets in and Jason as well. But and also we'll have to go backwards to 2019 because I forgot that this was just so recent. But what I want to say is, you saw this beautiful thing that's coming. Can you speak to that? Because I think that's always something that people. It's good for our souls in this density to hear what's coming, because it's sort of like water to a desert. So if maybe you can speak to that.
Well, I was kind of shown, like, for the spiritual and those of us that have been probably persecuted. I always say a lot of us have the persecution complex from being persecuted for our mysticism through how many zillion lifetimes, right? Because it gave power back to the people, and that just wasn't what some wanted, right? So it's kind of like the time where we're going to shine. It's the time where society is going to come. It's going to count on the healers, the energetic healers. The future is frequency, energy, sound healing. The future is healing these realities. Like I was doing this before I had an awareness of doing it, like going into other things and making more loving choices, like literally going into my other fractals and making more loving choices through all time. All of that healing is available now. It's available, that light energy is available to be multidimensional again. All of these things are there if you choose them, if you believe them, and you do the work to be them. But that means, like I said, living in that now, being mindful, all of those things of choosing love, to align with that. I mean, I'm sure I wasn't completely healed. I'm not saying you have to be completely healed. You just have to be aware that that is possible. Believe that it is possible, and you will experience it. The more you're around that light energy, that frequency I was shown, the more you pull your collective together, this jump team of yours, the more you're all going to expand. You're going to have more of this awareness. And just believe that, know that. Don't shut yourself down from new experiences, the new people coming into your perception. If you see them with love, they will see you with love. And this is how we start to expand, how we create that network. And that's what I was shown going forward. That is more and more available. People, there's still some that are sleepers. Don't discount them, because some of these people are for the final hour. They're that last push of energy that tips that balance. So some people are more like what I call in hibernation for a purpose, because they will carry so much light energy right now. They don't want to be exposed. Just trust everyone's path, that they're all here for this purpose in one way or another. No matter whether you think, oh, my husband's never going to wake up, he's never going to believe you. Trust me, they will. It's going to happen. You just have to trust divine timing. And I'm not saying everyone will in this lifetime, but by 800 years from now, we'll be living in Eden, but it's going to improve. Yes, there's going to be a lot of rocky starts, a lot of things that may happen, but your perception of them is not going to attach to them. Your perception is going to see it healed. Your perception is going to know this is the most loving choice for that thing right now. Just trust that everything is in that divine flow.
That's great.
That was intense, but that was more like,
that was channeling. You were, yeah. I'm going to toss the mic to Miss Linda. I'm going to step away for one quick second, but I know that Miss Linda's got some juice right here.
Okay, so my juice. So one of the things we were talking about is how much our thoughts matter, and I, like everyone else, I will think something and go, ew. That came out of my head, and I'll literally to just flip it. I think of Willy Wonka, saying back up, rewind, and I do this little back up, rewind, forget that, start over and replace that thought with something that I would rather have. And I think it actually makes a huge difference in how I interact with the world, because it's changing my thought patterns. And my husband's also great for changing my thought patterns. I think I'll be doing great and I'll say something and he will look at me and go, boy, that's really judgmental. That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, even if you're thinking of their highest good, sometimes it does come off as judgment. Like, well, that person doesn't have that understanding yet. Well, that's still kind of a form of judgment, because you're not accepting them right where they're at. But we all tend to do that when we have conversations about different things, like, oh, their understanding isn't the same as mine. Well, maybe they're not there yet, or maybe I'm not there yet. But, just loving them right where they're at is the easiest way. But I find that, like, if I can't switch a thought, I just switch it to what am I grateful for instantly. Like, if I have one of those things pop in, I'll ask, is this for me? What is this? Does this feel like me? But I try not to feed it too much energy. I just replace it with what I'm grateful for, or what the opposite of that thought. It just depends on what it is, and if it feels like mine. If it feels like mine, then why am I thinking this right now? What triggered that? And
I also think that if I get in a slump and I catch myself doing it, then I'll start really literally counting. Okay, I did that. I'm going to do 3 good thoughts for every negative one that comes in. Like, I'm just going to stop myself and do 3 things of gratitude to counter that thought that woe is me, or whatever's going on. Angela had a question. She said, sometimes NDEs create a pivot in the life trajectory. Have you ever inquired as to the reasons you've experienced multiple NDEs?
I think Jason and I touched on that prior. Yeah, because I wasn't listening. I didn't do, part of it was upgrade. It really was, like, and DNA changes, to hold the level of light that I needed to, that I chose for my life purpose, I guess. So there was some of that, but part of it was I didn't listen. Like, Kat wanted me to go back to my 2019 experience, if that's okay. That kind of falls into it. Okay. Yeah. So 2019, I started to get what I call like channeling and downloads. And a lot of it seemed like Yeshua. He was saying, like, I never came here for this. I wasn't supposed to be worshipped. We are equal. You're able to do what I could do, all of those type of things. And I'm like, am I losing it? What is going on? And I was adamant about it. Like, I knew these things, there's all these different knowings. And I was raised Catholic till I was like first grade, maybe, like after my NDE, I kind of dismissed it. So I didn't have this huge background or even know anything. I didn't read the Bible. I didn't know any of these things. And all this stuff was coming to me about various things and just about reality itself. Anyway, so I was just really disturbed that day. Like, I just got to get outside. I didn't know why I got to get outside, but I just had to get outside. And all of a sudden, as soon as I got outside, it was like this whole kind of how like the Akashic records plays out. This whole movie in front of my face of that my energy had been here since the beginning of creation. And then the choices that were made that brought it to utter chaos by my lack of mindfulness, right? So, but I think I was seeing as a collective oneness, because I really felt like it was Christ consciousness, like the divine moving through me. I don't know how other way to explain it. And so I even said, slow down, because I mean, this movie was so fast and the download was so fast. I just like, stop. I'm like, you're about to explode my mind. Like literally, I'm like, you guys, just give me the understanding. I can't handle the visual, it's just too much. And then I continued to walk out to the end of my driveway, and there's like these 3 huge trees. And ever since, I've called them the sentinels. Like, to me, I know, and never used to, like, trees are the most sentient thing on this planet, probably with the most history of the planet. And I don't know if it was them that gave me this or what, but I remember sitting out there and just crying, like ugly crying, going, I'm so sorry. I forgot. I'll do better. I'll do what you asked me to do. I will fix what I came here to fix. I am so sorry, and then I came backwards towards the house, and I stood in front of my house and I sang this song. I spoke in this language I do not know. I mean, it could have been light language. It kind of sounded slightly like Sami, like the Norse tribe. Again, I have connections to that, so I am not sure, but I sang this huge song, and it was healing, but it was also like a protection. I felt like I was healing this area, which I was told I was put here to do. So it was almost like maybe I was healing that vortex. And I like sang it all, and it was very ceremonial and powerful. And then I just threw my hands down, and there was this huge force of energy. And when I came back in, my daughter, who's also an experiencer of NDE and OBE and all these other things, anyway, she's like, your energy changed. She's like, I swear you were walking. She even says, Mom, are you? Like, she didn't, my energy did not feel the same. From my understanding, it wasn't that. And everybody has a different idea of walk-ins. To me, it was just, I brought in a higher fractal. So, and that was part of these other things with my near-death experience. I was of the understanding, like there's this collective of all these lifetimes that we've lived, and they each have their own personality complexes. And so part of this came out also in my quantum hypnosis. There's these personality complexes. That was what I was referring to when I said all the smoke and mirrors, was these external personality complexes of these godlings, right? And so these personality complexes are in this our huge oversoul, right? We pick like 3 or 4 of those to work on, and to finish out those lifetime like purposes that we had. And so my understanding was like, I completed some of those, so I brought in new ones. That's how I was able to come back on that 3rd death experience. I brought in something new because I completed that other one. I had done enough, so I brought in a new fractal, so to speak, of my oversoul, this personality complex, to work on, things to heal.
Did you bring that part in because it sounds like you brought in a larger part that was already healed, but you're saying you brought in to do more healing for yourself? I'm a little confused.
Well, there were a few things like between the 2019 and the 2021 that I still had to heal, because I had to find my voice. They told me I'd be speaking in front of large groups of people, and that, my voice would carry these light codes, and that's why I needed to speak my truth. And in my quantum hypnosis, I literally said, my advice to myself was, speak more, talk less. And when she asked for clarification, she said, stop filtering truth. Because I usually try to meet people where they're at, where their understanding is. They're like, no, that's still filtering. It's just like editing the Bible. The light code isn't there. You have to speak it, whether people are ready to hear it or not. It'll assimilate eventually. So that was part of it. So I brought back, a bigger aspect, my light being. I had a shaman even verify this, and someone else who's an NDEer asked me about it too, that I brought back 2 higher fractals of myself, that they can literally see. Like the one shaman could see it, and I just met him at random. This wasn't a reading or anything. He's like, holy heck, I've never seen that before. They were literally versions of me what higher versions of me, like there's 3 of you, you know, so I understand that's what I brought back with me to help heal these, you know, do this vortex healing and help people heal in the quantum, and all the work that like I picked for this purpose of being here to literally get us to that point that I talked about of why I wanted to come back. Like it was just to help that, build that community, make those connections, bring that remembrance to others. And whether they choose to remember in this lifetime, that's theirs. But I feel those that are guided to me, that's why that this is an agreement that we've had, that I carried these codes back for those people.
Would you say that those 2 larger fractals are your, what we would call your higher selves? Or what do you?
That's how he described it, higher selves.
Okay, so you've got 2 higher self aspects that are integrating, and you've formed a trine, as it were.
And 2 things happened because of that I want to share. I freaked my husband out. This is my only like real time, not near death experience that I like. I mean, as far as seeing something physical, I saw this sunbeam, you know, like if you were to paint the sun, a sunburst pattern, right? I saw this light above our lake, and I'm like, well, you know, that's my husband. I said, did they put up a new satellite? He's like, no, not that I know of. I'm like, well, there's this weird light. And all of a sudden, as soon as I recognized and validated that light, it moved way over till it was in front of my window and then expanded into this huge sunburst pattern. And it wasn't like it was light. The light wasn't shifting. It wasn't doing anything. It just opened up. And it was like 2D almost, you know what I mean, in the sky. But then it felt like it was coming to me, and it even like came through the window into my consciousness. I felt like I was having a near-death experience. It felt like it was literally pulling out my consciousness and having this merging thing. And then I was starting to freak out and yelling for my husband, and that's when he like came running up to the window, and there was nothing there, you know, because at first he's like, oh, it's probably maybe it's a, what do they call those things? Those drones or something, you know. And he's like, no, that was no drone, you know. But it was more, he told me the next day, it was more just because I was scared for you, because I didn't know what was going on. I knew it wasn't a drone. A drone don't look like that, you know. And but I got the understanding that that was me pulling in more from these higher fractals, like merging that. My shaman friend and in the quantum healing, that all came out, that like that was like a portal, like, and that I was merging with that and those higher fractals. It was about them, that I was merging that. So I thought that was very interesting. And it was pretty wild. And after that whole hypnosis, I also the next morning woke up and was literally getting all these codes, and they were basically pi, you know, what do they call that?
Pi squared.
Yeah, but all the numbers.
Fibonacci,
and they were,
the Fibonacci sequence.
Yes, that's my favorite word. Thank you. I couldn't think of it for a second. And I was literally getting this whole download of them. And they're like, and I woke up during it, and they're like, and I could see it if I opened my eyes or whatever I did. They're like, just calm down. We're almost. I'm like, well, hurry up with the download. I got things to do. And they were glowing like that, like just like the lightest source. They were literally like golden yellow, and they were just thousands of them after that quantum, because it was like I was aware of my mission. I chose, because I don't normally have readings or any of this, but I do video editing for my friends. So as a barter trade, she's like, I'll do a quantum hypnosis on you. And I kept going, oh yeah, but all of a sudden they're like, do it, you know. So it was one of those. So yeah. So those were some new experiences that I've just had, and I got a bunch more. And I had just gotten my master attunement to be a Reiki teacher, and yeah, all these strange things started happening again. And I was like, okay, well, here we go. Another upgrade. So, and since then I have been able to see all the different fractalations, like where people split when I do their healings, and able to open that energetic portal, you know, like that sunburst. I'm able to open that, and that's, I literally peer through it. It's almost like scrying, and through the quantum, like I can see, especially like their inner child, and I'll have these conversations with them, and various things, and that I'm able to see, and I just like need this energy, and I've been teaching it to my healing partners so that they can bring that source light to them and around them and do their own. You know, a healer is just a guide. I always say I'm a guide to remembrance. I'm not a healer, you know, and you have to make that choice to heal. No healer heals you. That's why, like, you might feel better for a little bit, but unless you do the work, you know, it's kind of like it still needs to be maintained. So I try to teach people how to find that remembrance and learn to heal their own body. I had to heal my body after my fourth death experience to come back. So I know it's possible. So, you know, I just want people to have that remembrance, that ability, because that's the way of the future, is energetic.
Do you have any questions, thoughts, Jason?
I do have a question. I hope I'm asking this the right way. Okay.
There's never no right or wrong. That's perception.
Okay. I'm going to touch back for just 1 minute, and then I'm going to ask my question, because my question essentially revolves around the two higher self aspects, right? And then also your jump team, your family. Because if I'm not mistaken, you said that your family are also fractals of yourself that are bringing in different light codes because your physical body couldn't handle all of it at once, right? Okay. So when you acquire these two new frequencies and these two higher selves, and you're getting these upgrades, since your family is also a fractal of yourself, are they also automatically then getting the upgrades through you? Does that make sense?
Yes, it seems like it, because even my husband, who's like one of these, he had some experiences when he was young, but he started having a bunch more and seeing a lot of things as I've become awakened. They have. My daughter was always kind of, you know, but yeah, we've all just kind of expanded exponentially. And my daughter laughs because this is another reason I say, like, we're so connected. And even my mother came through to her and said, we're both her daughters, you know, like, we're both one and the same. And so did other of my ancestral line, has said the same thing to her, like, we are one, you know, like, you are her, you know, there's no distinction to them. And it's interesting because if I ask for something like a validation for spirit, a lot of times it will come through my daughter, and she'll be like, Mom, what'd you ask for? Now I had this weird horse experience last night. I'm like, oh, sorry. Or beings will show themselves to them because I want to know if they, you know, are like, they've seen light beings and all different things. And because I've asked, you know, I'll ask spirit, like, you know, is this real, or is that real, or is this, am I right how this works? I don't want to speak about something if I'm not understanding it properly, and it'll come through them. So I really feel that, yeah. And I have 3 children, and they're all gifted in their own way. And my son is finally having remembrances of what he is and what he does. And but he's one of those that I say was maybe like what you call a sleeper. His work has more to do with the future stuff, where me and my daughter and have a lot to do in the sense of these awarenesses. Because if people start to hear that other people are having these experiences, or these experiences are possible, it will expand their experience. And that's how energy works. And that's how we are infinity, eternal, because everybody lives it a little different. Everybody makes a little bit different choice. We're all unique for a purpose, or that it keeps that energy flowing through infinity. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, because and I find it really interesting. Like, we speak on that in a lot of our spiritual groups or sharing groups, because we notice the more people come and connect with us, the more they're having their own experiences. We get a lot of people in our NDE groups and things that'll be like, well, I've never had an NDE, but I'm interested, or I'm this. And they'll start having all these spiritual awareness and experiences because you've expanded their reality. And that's what we're all here to do. That's why we all have to speak our truth and live authentically. When we hide all these things, we do not serve the greatest good. We're so afraid of judgment that we're not being ourselves.
And we're perpetuating that fear. We're perpetuating that pattern, the old, which we've come to break apart. Nancy Legit has a question. She says, so reaching here, but it seems like a lot of persons who have NDEs are more connected. Does it follow that those who don't have them maybe don't need to pivot? It's the opposite.
Oh, it depends upon, I wrote this thing and it was trying to, I'm supposed to be writing a book, they tell me of it, that you don't have to die to learn to live. But for the energetic upgrades at the time and what was available, that's just how they moved me along. And I can't claim anything for any other near-death experiences because that's not my path. But for me, it was for that expansion and to be aware that there was something beyond this reality. And I was supposed to be speaking my truth this whole time. And I did in general. I can't remember now how many people told me after my first that I should write a book or be telling more people. And I didn't. I didn't realize there's probably spirits talking through all these people. Like, they're like, that's life-changing. If I wish, why didn't you tell me this sooner? All of those things, so it's just important to speak it. Some people are afraid to speak it, like, well, somebody will steal my story or they'll judge me or my family will never, instead of, you would be surprised the more I speak, how many people come to me, even if it's in confidence, that have had these type of spiritually awakening experiences, not just near death. There's all sorts of them available. You don't have to die. You can start meditating. You can practice astral. You can practice all sorts of things, or just ask spirit. I mean, they do not interfere in your sovereign story unless you ask. So ask, like, if this is real, can you show me this? Talk to your guides. We have healing guides, we have guides, we have angels, whatever you want to call them, these higher frequencies of understanding. My understanding is, I can always use discernment because, our guides are just more aware fractals of ourselves, so like I'm guiding people below me. Like we're literally all being that hand down the ladder, so, use discernment, but, just understand that they'll help you if you ask, and be specific what you want to see. Like people always ask, like, why don't I remember my past lives? Well, if it doesn't serve this life in any way, you're not going to. If you knew all your past lives, think how many people you would miss and how many other souls that you've come in contact with. So the only ones I remember are things that were still affecting this one that I either needed to heal or have the understanding, so I knew how I was connected to other people.
Yeah, and I think that it's not always black and white. Like, I think there's so many different reasons why people have NDEs. Some people are deciding if they want to go home or not, and some people are, it's not always a kick in the pants, but sometimes it is, and it can be, and rest assured, the universe will kick you in the pants when the way that you need to be kicked in the pants. If you're not paying attention, you may not need an NDE. You may need something more drastic than an NDE. So yeah.
I'm stubborn. That's my personality complex. It's followed me everywhere. But yeah, very much so.
I was going to ask you, in terms of your Reiki attunement, you said that it opened up the Akashic records for you, and it returned your medical intuitive abilities. Had you lost your medical intuitive healing abilities?
I just wasn't aware of that. I remember when I worked in the medical field, like there was this one instance, I went in the room and I said, it was like a 5 or 6 year old girl. And I was like, it's her appendix. I walked out and told the doctor, it's her appendix. I don't know. I just sensed it. And he's like, oh no, what is it? He grumbled at me, right? Like, how did you know? He went in there and he came back out and he's like, he was white as a ghost and his jaw dropped. And he's like, how did you know? Because I would have missed that. And you know what would have happened if I would have missed that? Because, you don't expect that of that age, So, I had some of that in my 20s, but I guess maybe because I wasn't doing the healing work anymore and I left the medical field for lots of good reasons. Anyway, and so they're not in the business of making people well. I mean, there's people who have the intention. I did, but it wasn't about that. Anyway, yeah. So, and I had this experience when I switched to family practice. And I don't want to get into that because that's too controversial, but I had an experience where I literally felt what this baby was feeling. And I just couldn't do it anymore. I left and I told him, no, I'm not coming back. I just walked out. I literally, anyway, and so I just, anyway, so I know I had that ability, but I think once I kind of left the medical field, it wasn't as intuitive anymore because I wasn't doing healings. I wasn't looking. And I always tell people, as far as the work I do, it's whatever is for their highest good. I have the ability to do all these things and tap into different things and clairs and Akashic and whatever, but it doesn't come through for everyone. Sometimes all of it does. It's just, you have to trust what's for your highest good. I mean, people will come in with questions and things, and sometimes I get answers, but more often than not, it is what is for their highest good, or they don't necessarily see that like, I'll see the root cause, and it takes a while for a lot of people to see that is the root cause. Like, this is where you fractured. This is where it all stemmed from. This is where your energy went off path, or whatever terminology you want to use. So that is what spirit guides me to. And I just trust that and pray that anybody that works with me does too, because it will take you where you need to go, even though you might not know the destination.
That's nicely said. Miss Linda, Mr. Jason, anything before we start heading into closing?
What is a typical, and this may be a kind of a vague, broad question, but what would a typical session, like if someone booked with you, what typically does that look like?
Usually what happens is I'll go to the quantum field the night before. And sometimes I speak to their higher self, sometimes it's loved ones, whatever. I get various messages, various things, whatever they need. So usually I start the session, going over anything I got intuitively or from the quantum field that relates to them, so they know that I connected with that energy. It's kind of like being evidential, I suppose, and they've always been able to connect so far, or an understanding at least that they felt that energy. And then what I do is, everyone's different, because it is my voice supposedly that gives part of the healing, and their voice, because you can tell in frequency of their voices also, that energy, like what's going on in their body. I have a friend who does bioacoustics, and that's all about that, where they measure the voice and stuff. So it really gave me that validation when I learned about it from her, because she's like, when I talked about this, she told me about that. I was like, well, that explains it, But so when people talk to me, I can read those frequencies, and so I will talk for a little bit and see where they're at. It just helps me connect energetically, and then from there, usually what I do is I do what I call a vortex. I open up this quantum state. It's like I said, I talked about it earlier, where I literally look into this quantum and I need this energy. I literally need it like dough, and I pull it and expand it so that I can see there. And usually what happens is I will either see like all the points that they made a decision out of like fear that fractured them, or that was highly traumatic to them. Sometimes I will see different loved ones and literally their roles and their aspects and what created them that caused this, various things like that. All different things. It just depends what spirit wants me to see in those moments. And usually then I send healing. Usually I look where like the base fracture is, and I will have this communication, because it's usually like anywhere from 2 to like 12, I find, year old self. And I will do what I call, the child healing, the inner child healing. And I will give them, through the quantum space, that understanding and those tools, and give them that understanding and safety. And I kind of create a vortex where future and past self can kind of communicate with themselves, is what it looks like to me. And then I send them the love that of source, which is like the best parent you could ever have, right? The way you wanted to be loved as a child where you first fractured, right? And I send that healing and braiding into there. And even those awarenesses of where you had each of these helps people know where they need that healing and where they don't. Because like usually I'll get numbers of the ages that these things happened or what significantly happened, or they'll show me a thing on that age. And from there, I do that healing and just, and I impart any wisdom, or if there's anything, like sometimes people need supplements, or sometimes people, aren't making, life choices that are in alignment. I've also braided in this is where I see if like there's a new energy of fractal that's trying to come in for something they want to face or something they're choosing to experience. So I'll help braid in that energy. Sometimes, there's like some soul retrieval type stuff that comes into it. It just really depends. Each is individual, but that's pretty much the process. And then I teach them how to try to get to that space themselves for continued healing, or, I try to align their chakras energetically. And sometimes I'll see where there's damage, or what I see sometimes with a lot of people is where they've taken in other attachments or other things. It'll look like pigpen, like this black ball of dust, so to speak, in that energy centers. And so we work on clearing that out or detaching it if it's not theirs. But I think that's pretty much it. But everyone is different.
That was great. That was a lot. Anything, Linda, before I ask the final question?
No, I am going to let you have more time for her to give us the answer to your final question.
Okay, thank you. So Lorelei, what would, in your final words, I mean, you've been all heart, all sharing, all healing right here. Are there any final words that your heart would like to share with our audience?
Well, the most thing that Spirit always communicates to me going forward, and I've spoken it, but I can't stress authenticity enough. Have no fear of who you are. Live authentically from that place of spirit and love that is you, without filtering it for the outside world. You're not helping anyone trying to pull yourself back when you connect with people, just so you'll be accepted, because people sense that. And they sense that maybe you're not authentic, or maybe that, or your energy is off-putting, because they feel that it's not. We naturally feel energy, whether we realize that's what we're reading. And that also has to do with holding your own frequency and knowing your own frequency, because it's very important going forward of how you take in energy and your awareness and ability with it. We're master alchemists, literally. So, step into your power. Stop giving it away. Stop letting people tell you who you are. You know who you are. No one outside of you should be influencing that and telling you who you are if it doesn't resonate with you. You don't have to be a certain person for other people. You are already loved unconditionally. There is nothing more that you need in this world. Everything is a reflection of you. So if you live authentically, those around you will learn to live authentically. That's all there is. Thank you for letting me share today.
Yeah, you're welcome. So beautiful. I just love your energy so freaking much. So and I will say that I went to Lorelei for healing, and I'm gonna have some follow-up sessions because, as Linda well knows, she's heard me say this all too much over the last year. If I knew how to do it myself, I would be doing it. And just because I had just so much going on, I was like, I don't know, like it's overwhelming to me. And my experience with Lorelei was profound. And between Lorelei and the divining rods, or the dowsing rods, my life is shifting. So I just hats on to Ms. Lorelei and her work. And now I will talk no more. I'll talk no more as I toss the mic to Miss Linda and let her start our gratitudes, and I'll flip us to the Brady Bunch view.
Okay, and as I start to talk, first of all, we had great conversation on the side. I have to go back and watch pieces of the show because we had such great conversations on the side. I missed a little bit of it. So I will be rewatching some of this. But that just says how much people were helping each other in the chats, and I love that. So thank you, everyone who participated. Thank you to our salon members. Make sure that you hit that like button if you haven't already, and share this as well, because there's somebody that you know that needs probably to hear this message or a piece of it. So please do that, maybe in a group that you're in. Also, be sure to check out all of our links below. They're all there in case you want to contact any of us. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Lorelei. Thank you for being that diamond willing to step forward from our group. And Jason, thank you again for just your presence is always adding so much. And Kat, thank you again for everything that you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Linda. And yeah, and thank you to Miss Linda, of course, our anchor in the show, energetic anchor. So thank you. I want to tell you that next week for our guest is Rosetta Jansen. Now, some of you, if you're in our Facebook group, you know who she is because she's the one that shows up every week and says, there is a message in the following images for you. Hello, beloved. You are loved so much. In the following image, there's a message for you. And it was one of those things that really got me through some hard moments because I would go back to it time and again as sort of a divining tool, as a dowsing tool in a way, in terms of like messages from the divine to get me back on track. And she has an incredible story of healing and overcoming cancer through her mind, through her heart, through her love, and through surrendering to love. So another gem that's in our own backyard, aka our Third Eye Salon community, that was just sitting there glowing. And I talked to Linda about who she was and her experiences, and I was like, oh my God, we need to get her on the show. So we are very, very excited to have her next week. So please do join us for that. It's going to be a story that you've never heard before because this is the first time she's really sharing it in a public forum. So I'm excited. All right. So with that,
I'm so excited to add, she's amazing with nutrition.
Oh, yes.
So please join in because her knowledge is incredible. So I've known her for several years and you don't want to miss next week.
Well said. Well said. All right. And with that, again, thank you, Miss Lorelei. Thank you, everyone that watched today. It was just a magical show. All of Lorelei's links are down below. You can join her Facebook group. You can reach out to her for energetic healing work that is on a fractal quantum level. It's amazing. With that, we love you. Take care, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.